Hello, everyone. Since we have a small crowd, it's actually going to be nice that we can have a little bit more of a conversation. So as I'm going through this presentation, feel free to ask questions. Now, before I get started, one thing I wanted to gauge, just in terms of an eBay customer perspective, who do we have here? How many of you are actually buyers? Okay. How many are actually sellers? Okay, that's what I expected. It seems like we have more sellers. How many of you sellers have managed claims or experienced claims? Good, good. So definitely, give me feedback. I am the product manager for this system, both the on-site as well as the API, so that'd be great to get feedback from you. And as most of you know, that any e-commerce business, especially, that's growing, a percentage of your transactions are going to be at risk, right? This is normal in the business. And when they're at risk, the seller's ROI, your ROI, is, at risk. And so one of the most important things, the goal of these APIs is really kind of protecting the seller ROI with proactive resolution management. And also, before I go on, how many of you have custom applications leveraging these APIs already? One? Okay. So it'd be great to also hear some of your experiences. So what I'm going to do is describe the eBay Buyer Protection Program. Most people experience it as a buyer, and as a seller, if there is a claim, that's when you're going to get involved. And this is important to get the business context and the various use cases, customer use cases. And then I'm going to go just briefly describe a couple of applications, very simple ones that you could use with the APIs, and finally how to get started on the APIs. So eBay Buyer Protection Program is both a policy as well as a kind of a claim system. And it has a set of phases that I'm going to walk you through. And the first phase or step in the program is really buyer filing a claim. So anyone want to guess? Let me see, how many claims are filed in a year on eBay? How many think it's 1,000, in the thousands range? Okay. How many think it's in the millions? How many in the billions? Anybody in the billions? Nope. Okay. It's actually in the millions. It's about 6 million per year. And a more interesting number in terms of the ROI that is at risk, you're looking at about 500 million. So this is why it's important for sellers, and many of you in the audience, to make sure you're engaged in the claim system or the eBay Buyer Protection Program. And since many of you, or a few of you, do have experience with it, there's basically two types of claims. And one reason why it's important to know these claim types, because some of this information is context is within the APIs, and so then you'll kind of start understanding what to do and what actions to take. And one of them is item not received. Makes sense. Haven't gotten the product. That buyer hasn't gotten the product. Go ahead and escalates. And then significantly not as described. Say if you ordered a red Bluetooth and you got a purple one. And so you call up and file a claim, or you file a claim. So you can actually call, obviously, eBay CS as well as file a claim. Most of our buyers do file claims. Now, let's say the buyer files a claim, and as a seller, the next thing really is the seller is notified by eBay. And really the next phase is what we call seller makes it right, or smear. And let me ask you, how many cases on average do you think a seller typically gets? Is it within the hundreds? Is it within the, anybody for hundreds? No? What about thousands? Any millions? No, because we had only like 5 million claims, so if you had in the millions, it means somebody's getting a lot of them. So it depends on the type of seller, but on average, it's within the hundreds. And if you're an eBay top-rated seller, then you're looking at definitely in the thousands. So just imagine this volume of claim and trying to go on site to actually manage them. And here are a few types of just actions that we're going to walk through in the examples. And one of them is if the buyer filed an item not received claim. One of the easiest things a seller can do is provide tracking. Now, this tracking information is not just for justification to eBay, but more importantly, it's to the buyer, so the buyer knows what's happening with their item, that hey, and when to expect it. And then in some cases, like I described in the significantly not as described, the SNAD use case. Maybe the buyer got the wrong, like I said, Bluetooth, the wrong color, but maybe they're willing to keep it for a certain refund, a partial refund. So anyways, these are the two most common kind of actions that sellers do take, not only through the APIs, but even online today. So now let's move on where about 40% of our claims the sellers have not engaged. They haven't responded. And for good reasons. They're trying to manage their business. They're taking orders. They're shipping orders, right? And just timing-wise, they weren't able to get to that particular claim. And, and then there's some that, just didn't see the importance of it. And then what happens is that at some point the buyers are going to escalate. Certain buyers will escalate. And when they escalate, it's a 48-hour period that eBay makes a decision based on the information that's in the case. And if the seller hasn't engaged, then it's pretty much the buyer's side, right? And then what's going to happen is eBay is going to mostly adjudicate in the buyer's favor, and basically you're going to lose most of that ROI, or actually all of it. So now as a seller, what are the consequences that you face if you weren't able to engage in this claim? And as an ETR seller, for example, with 1,000 cases that you have per year, you're going to be there's a potential based on the number of claims and obviously the number that turn into where buyer wins and seller fault, where you could actually lose your fee, your eBay fee discount. And this could be about a 20 to 10% impact on your ROI. So this is, could be pretty important and could be within, the 10,000s to, million, depending on your seller volume. And logging in and clicking and choosing and, for every page is not an efficient way to manage these claims, right? And that's really why there's a clear need to not only kind of automate but optimize these eBay cases. Just one thing to notice is just in general, I do flip-flop between cases and claims, so just assume they're equal. So any questions just on the eBay Buyer Protection Program before I move on to just a few simple examples? No? Okay. So here's an example, very simple app in the sense that you only have to use a few APIs. And this is really being proactive. If you use an API to get the number of open claims per day, and then you farmed it out to your CS agents to say, hey, here's a queue, hey, call these buyers up proactively. And you can resolve these cases probably within a 10-minute conversation with the buyer right online, point and clicking and finishing up, right? Or even if you did only use the API for this and then the rest, the web experience. I was talking with a seller in one of my seller visits. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Allow a question already?
Huh?
You want to allow a question?
Yeah, that's okay, yeah.
So when you say customer support should my name is Sylvan. So when you say CS should contact the buyer, I mean, for the longest period, there was no capability to get the phone number of the actual buyer. In a lot of the regions, that's still the case. So what's your suggested blueprint for that, basically, to contact the buyer?
Okay, the contact. I'm not aware of some of the, like you said, in certain regions where the information is not currently shared. So I'll have to get back to you on, what are the different policies and the different sites that we have. I just know in the U.S. that some of this information is available. And one of the examples I was just going to mention related to this is when I went and talked with a bunch of sellers about a few months ago, one of the sellers, and just the importance of this proactive, one of the sellers immediately, and I think it was a fixed time frame after the purchase, literally called up every buyer and just kind of said, hey, just want to make sure everything's okay, and that almost like I think it was a 10 to 15-minute call reduced their claim volume significantly. And so what this example was just kind of the proactiveness, and a simple app like this could help reduce the disputes and also make sure you retain that buyer for another purchase in the future. And the second one was really related to that item not received, and just basically if you did not upload the tracking at the time of the purchase, which is you can do today, and you just marked as shipped, then in this use case you can actually upload the tracking for the claim, and that way it would automatically close. And like I said, more importantly, it's for the buyer, so now the buyer is confident that they're going to be getting the product soon. Do you have a question over there?
What kind of tracking do you take? We haven't been providing it because we use DHL. And they don't have a standard USPS tracking number. So do you support tracking for all the carriers, or is it just USPS and UPS?
So that's a good question, and my basic knowledge a little bit on this is that we allow you to upload a number, And then certain numbers we're able to validate, like USPS and certain providers that we do work with. So I think in general there is a free-form text where you can still upload it and at least inform the buyer. And like I said, is if the buyer gets to tracking, then if the buyer's fine, they will not escalate. And so you can address your situation right there, even if we're not actually going to the third-party site.
Thanks.
You had a question?
When people are now filing these cases on eBay, the problem is that once they file the case, it lowers your search ranking. So if the case is not taken care of, how do I get my search ranking to go up? Like if someone just decides to file a case for whatever reason, automatically my search ranking is going to go down because the performance level is not at your certain recommended levels. How do I go about that? Let's say a case is not being handled or it's maybe taken a little while to get resolved. How do I get my search rankings back up so my items will appear in eBay search results?
Yeah, and I think is a couple of things is just in general, as a seller, you don't control buyers filing claims, right? That's something. And the thing is that, but you do control managing the claims. And from a lot of the being actually on some of these calls with the CS agents myself, as well as looking just at the patterns of the claims, a lot of these things are upstream issues that that could have been addressed, miscommunications that actually happened upstream in the listing. And it's just better descriptions, could be just return policies or anything else, or the description that I've seen have significantly improved the actual for a single item. And maybe, what I could do is take this offline with you one-on-one and just let me understand the types of claims they're filing. And then that would maybe help me determine what would be the more upstream thing that we could do to try to reduce the number of claims. But as you pointed out, the number of claims as well as the seller fault, these are actually in your seller standards. And so they do impact your kind of just rating. I think there was any other questions out there? No? And so these are just examples of the APIs that are on the site, and the first one is just getting, like I mentioned in the first app, just a list of cases and what state they're in. And depending on what state they're in, you can actually appropriately kind of perform bulk operations on them. And if you want to go to a specific case, and like in the example where let's say if the seller's agent proactively worked on a case and now wants to look at an individual case while they're talking to the buyer, that's where they would get to the second API, where it's get EBP case details. And this is one reason why I kind of gave you some of the acronyms, because you can see they're all over the place, like EBP and et cetera. And these are just two examples, some of which I talked about. Refund is very common in terms of satisfying the buyers. And we have for full as well as we have a partial refund API. In terms of tracking, this is how you would provide tracking information. And whether it's something eBay personally tracks or whether it's just even a number that the buyer can go to another website to track. Yes?
There's an enhancement request. So if you would allow sellers to actually issue a specific coupon for that specific store the purchase was made in, that would be much more powerful than the actual refund. Because with a refund, you don't know where the buyer is going to go with the money. If you offer a coupon instead, you could keep the money within eBay, within your specific store. So I know it's a big ask, but if that would be possible, that would be really helping.
Okay. We'll definitely take that feedback. I know they have considered those options on the business side before. I'm on the product side, but I'm not sure what was the reason for going for a refund versus a coupon. And one of the things to realize is a lot of the phase that I'm talking about, where you would proactively manage, the claim, is really about we're trying to eBay in general. We want to keep we would prefer that most claims get resolved between buyer and seller and they don't get escalated. So where eBay does not have to be involved, right? And so in that case, it's really you as a seller trying to figure out how can I retain this customer, and that's why this is specifically here. But at some point, I can see where the seller wasn't able to engage, and where eBay had to get involved, where eBay could be offering those options. And then the last one is just in general an example of an action API is to upload documents, any kind of proof. Maybe you didn't have tracking, but it's certified mail, and so that you can upload it. So again, when the agent looks at it, they have 48 hours. They're not spending a lot of time. There's, thousands of these claims coming in per day that they basically can quickly, adjudicate and say, hey, seller, prove that they did actually ship the product, and here's it's certified, and any other documentation you have, even if it's an ad case, you can upload pictures and prove that either the box you got back from the buyer, the product was actually broken, right? So this way, it's a fair information from both the buyer and the seller when the agent is adjudicating in 48 hours or less. So any questions? No? So anyways, it looks like at least one person over here is familiar with this, but these APIs have been available for some time. They're available, just go under Products, link at the top, and then when you go into the Resolution Management APIs, that's where you're going to see this page. So if you have any questions, after the session, definitely we can have some one-on-one discussions and about not only optimizations, but, hey, which APIs to use and et cetera. Thank you.